should we continue to profit off and sensationalize real people's lives, real crimes, highlight people like Jeffrey Dahmer and the Menendez brothers? Like, is that where we are? Should we be sitting there and enjoying it? Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Life Uncut. I'm Brittany.
And I'm Keeshia, and I am filling in for Laura today. And it is such a pleasure because I am podcasting today with the 2024 ACRA Award winners.
You loser.
I mean, one of the two. Congratulations. It is such an amazing thing, and we will get into it. But firstly, we should let you know why Laura's not here.
So Keeshia is filling in for Laura today because Laura, if you follow along with Laura has been cruising the high seas. She's been on a family reunion cruise. I don't exactly know where she went. It wasn't that far. It was just like on the coast of Australia. But she's coming back into port as we speak. So that's why she's not here. And
she took the entire family, like her family, her sister's family. Her brother came over from America.
As a whole thing.
Sister-in-law's family. It was the whole family affair. But yeah, that's why I'm here today. And back to the ACRAs, it stands for the Australian Commercial Radio Awards. And Britt and Laura won for Best Podcast Hosts. I'm saying this with a compliment. How the did you beat out Hamish and Andy?
I was like, hang on, where are you going with this?
Yeah.
So the awards were on the weekend. It's like our industry's night of nights. It's the Oscars for the radio world, and podcasting is often grouped into that world as well because a lot of podcasting is part of radio. Like it's either owned by radio, works alongside radio. And it's one of those things that you never think you're going to win ever, especially when you're up against Hamish and Andy. So they were in the category of best hosts. And for me, that was the best part. Not that we beat them, but that they've been like idols in a way.
They're royalty.
They are royalty. And if there's anyone that you could want to be like, or we would want to be like, it's like the female version of them, I guess. And it's not like you try to be that, but they're funny, they're successful, they're so good at what they do. So like when they're in, we're like, well, they're obviously going to win. Like we're not going to have a chance.
And also they are the biggest podcast in Australia. Like they win number one. I don't think there's been a month where they haven't, even when they go on their 3-month break. So that was actually so incredible. I'm so stoked for you guys and so proud of you. It is such an incredible achievement. And I just wanted to say, I know that we kind of talk sometimes about like, oh, you know, does anyone care? Does anyone,
Probably not.
Like you might not, but it's such an incredible achievement. And also I just want to make it a little clear because we got some messages yesterday where people were like, yay, I voted for you guys. They're actually a separate award.
Yeah. No, so that's coming up next month.
That's coming up next month. So we're still hopeful for that one, but we're not going to hold our breath. And I'm so stoked that you guys, you know, have got that little bit of recognition within the industry. However, I feel really, really betrayed because you and I went to the awards night. We had so much fun. I was completely sober.
Same.
I did not have any alcohol. And yesterday I had one of the worst hangovers I've ever had in my life. And I genuinely don't know how. Like, is this just being in your 30s and staying out past midnight? Is that what happens?
Well, I don't think we can call it a hangover. I felt the same. So I was like, couldn't get off the lounge all day. I had these headaches. Didn't drink any alcohol. I don't think we can call it a hangover, but something happened. But I think it's just being in your 30s and it was overstimulated. I think it was like too many lights and noises and sounds and like I think your adrenaline's high and you're getting all these dopamine hits and you're talking to people and then all of a sudden you're on this drop.
Yeah, but I actually felt like I'd been hit by a truck. I threw up. I don't understand what happened to my body and I've kind of been questioning whether all of my hangovers in the past were actually because of alcohol because that's kind of a big reason why I stopped drinking. And I'm like, maybe it wasn't alcohol at all.
I think you just ate something off and that is why you vomited. But I think your past hangovers were definitely because I've been out with you. I know what they were.
Yeah,
your past hangovers were because you sent it.
Definitely sent it.
And the reason that Laura was obviously photoshopped in was because she wasn't there. But I can't tell. We were getting some comments on photos and I can't tell if people were serious or not. But some people were like, oh, so funny that Laura showed up from holiday, like quickly showed up. And I was like, do you know that she wasn't really there or are you joking? I wasn't sure. But I was like, the Photoshop wasn't that good.
It was not a good Photoshop job. It was definitely a copy paste of like a sticker into Instagram. But some people sent messages also saying like it took me a bit of a hot second because they looked at the two of us who were dressed up for a black tie event and then Laura was in her cruising outfit. And they were like, that was an interesting choice of outfit from Laura. It took a little second for it to kind of click.
I do actually have an update for you, Keeshia. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad you're here for other reasons too. Last week we were talking on the podcast about how hot my dad was. I wasn't. To be clear, I was not talking about how hot my dad is. Laura and Keeshia off camera started to talk about how hot they think my dad is. Laura used to have like daddy crush when we first started this podcast 5 years ago. My dad is great. He is fit and healthy. Keeshia sometimes texts him. They have like a cute little relationship. I don't know, not a relationship, but like, you know, my dad's very involved in the podcast. He listens to every episode. He loves the girls. But Dad didn't know that everyone thought he was so hot. Anyway, we thought it would make a great social video. You guys might have seen. We put it on socials.
Because we weren't actually, we were kind of setting the cameras up. Like it wasn't going to be a part of the podcast.
It was never, yeah.
Somehow got sidetracked and stuff.
It was never supposed to be part of the podcast. It was like behind the scenes stuff that we just ended up using. So I wanted to give my family like the heads up.
Does your family think I'm a massive creep?
Well, sort of, yeah.
I mean, for other reasons, but do they now think double down on the fact that I'm a creep?
Okay, so this is so funny. I'm in a family chat with everyone, sisters and brothers, their partners, whatever. Anyway, so I was like, hey guys, Dad, heads up. I was like, not that I think you're going to have a problem with it, but this is going out today to the world. Put the video in that has you guys talking about it. And then
I wasn't worried about your dad's reaction. I was worried about your mum's reaction.
Oh, funny you say that, Keeshia.
I was like, Nikki's going to ban me from the family.
So the first thing that someone writes is my mum. And she wrote, wow, well, happy 46th wedding anniversary to us. I forgot.
Nikki, it's great. You've had a hot husband for 46 years.
Keeshia, it was their what are the odds? It was their wedding anniversary
that
of
day.
46 years that day, and I forgot. And then I pretend I didn't forget, and I was like, "Yep, this was
us celebrating.
This was the congratulations, Mum, that you have a hot husband for 46 years." But that was and then anyway, it turned into this whole thing in the family chat. But my parents have been married 46 long, loving years, and that was how I congratulated them with some 30-year-olds telling them how hot Tony was.
I would like it on record. Nikki is also a babe. She's also a ride and very, very attractive. So congratulations to both of your parents for having a really hot spouse for 46 years. But that 46 years that's crazy.
Time.
It's actually so admirable that they have had such a good relationship. And I know that, you know, you learn a lot of your relationship values from them. And they're the first people to say, like, it hasn't all been sunshine and rainbows, but it's a testament, you know, pursuing through the hard times.
It definitely, sometimes I used to think they set me up for failure, like in a way, because when you have such a healthy relationship for 46 years and you're brought up in that, I was like, well, how the fuck am I ever going to find that? I was like, you guys are unicorns. It was almost like the way that they treat each other and the way my dad treats my mum and always has. Like I have never, ever even heard my dad raise his voice. And so that just set this really high standard. So basically I blame my 35 years of singledom on my dad.
I love how most people are like, oh yeah, divorce really fucks kids up. And you're like, no, really good relationship is what fucked me up.
My loving, healthy relationship set me up for failure. I'm joking, obviously. One thing I did want to talk about, it's something that behind the scenes Keeshia and I have been texting each other about. We've been watching it together. We spoke about Love is Blind last week, and Monica and Stephen, we spoke about therapy talk, that we thought this guy Stephen was manipulating words that you would learn in therapy, that therapy speak. We thought he was using them to manipulate the partner he got matched with, Monica. And if you haven't listened to that yet, go back and have a little listen. It was last week's ep. Keeshia last week was sort of got on board with this guy. Like at the end, she was like, look, he did have this moment. She's like, I've watched ahead a few episodes and he's actually seems like a really great guy. I, on the other hand, got the ick. He gives me the ick.
Yeah, I wasn't team Stephen, but because we were criticizing him on the podcast, right? And we were saying like, you know, I think he's manipulative and I don't know whether he's done this deliberately, but he definitely seems to be using this therapy talk in a way that it wasn't designed for. And I just wanted to say to us, like, let's just be careful because it doesn't look as though he's going to be the villain of the show. So I don't want to go too hard on him if he ends up being, you know, an all right person and this was just a little bit of a slip up.
Yeah.
Well, then
then
Netflix released some more episodes and I was like, wow, we should have gone 1,000 times harder on him.
Well, firstly, this is going to include spoilers. So if you're about to watch the show or you want to watch the show or you just don't want to hear what we're about to say, we are skipping forward to episode 8 and we are about to give a spoiler. This is your 3, 2, 1 to check out. Okay.
So it turns out that Stephen was supposed to go to a sleep study For some reason, he was drunk. Like none of
didn't
this
make sense.
It doesn't make any sense. And he was texting an ex about certain fantasies that he wanted to do with her, all while he was still engaged and living with Monica. So this is what happened.
I did make a completely stupid mistake while being drunk at a sleep test with somebody who texted me.
You were doing it today, Steven. You texted her today. And the really gross ones were today. So don't fucking lie to my face. Were you guys texting today?
No.
You weren't texting today. Okay, let me see your phone.
I deleted the message.
Of course you did.
Yeah, because I didn't want to look at it either. And it was coupled with the conversation that we had last night.
Don't you fucking blame me at all.
I'm not.
For you
I'm not
being
blaming
gross.
you. I'm blaming my actions on myself based on how I took our conversation. I'm taking full responsibility for this, which is why I'm getting my stuff and I'm leaving you alone.
Great.
So I really felt sorry for Monica, but then I went on their Instagrams and they're sharing each other's posts. She shared his post where they're in like a car having fun, and then I got this real like, was that even real, or are you just doing this for publicity? And then he's posting all this stuff like, oh, here comes the villain arc. I was like, you are a villain. You cheated on your wife.
This narrative we see so much with reality TV of like, it's the edit and I'm not as bad as what they say I am. And I'm like, I understand a lot can be done in production. And I mean, like, we work in production. I understand how much you can actually manipulate a story in post. But you can't make people text their ex their sexual fantasies when they're drunk at a sleep study. Like, this story is just not adding up. And he's like, I'm taking full accountability. I don't think you are, Dal. I think you need to go and do some personal work. And what I hate about this is like, I understand when people have their own shit to work through and when they're like, I need to work on myself and I'm going to take the time to do that. I'm so sick of them involving other people and getting into relationships at that time, because I think it's absolutely fine to acknowledge that you've got some personality flaws and that you've got some, insecurities and whatever that you need to work on to overcome. Don't get into relationships with people. He went on Love is Blind. The premise of the show is that you're supposed to be ready to get married. And he's like, I've got a lot of stuff to work on and I'm going to go and work on that. And it's like, no, you shouldn't have ever put yourself in this position because you're just fucking someone else over. You're just wasting their time. You're not being respectful of the fact that they're investing in you when you're not at a position that you're able to. And I think that's why I got so frustrated about him in general as the episode kind of played out. I was like, you should never have been here. You should never have taken the opportunity away from her to meet someone who actually is ready for those things.
Sort of giving Honey Badger vibes, wasn't it? Like, should you have been here? There are so many scenes.
No, do not continue. I'm deceased. I'm actually fucking deceased. It's almost giving, I wasted 3 months of an entire production crew and 30 women.
Deja vu. I'm getting like a flashback.
Actually, I wasn't ready for this. I just wanted to,
I know
have a
I'm
bit of fun.
I know I'm on a love show to find someone, but I just think I need to be single for a while. Okay, cute. Love that for you. Besides the fact that he's gross, gives me the ick, gaslighting her and just a dickhead. But the best part, I think, happens next.
Before you leave, I would like you to Venmo me the money you owe me for me carrying your weight the last couple days. If you wouldn't mind taking out your phone now to send me the Venmo.
Boss move.
I love this so much. Like, and just to give a bit more context, it's not just that he cheated, they were breaking up and she asked for the money. The context behind this, earlier in the episode, they're talking about how he lost his job. So he hasn't been working. And I think that was because he went away on the show for a couple of months. He got back, they moved in together, he went back to work and they were like, we had to replace you. There's this big scene where he has lost his job and he's like, I don't have work for a little while. And she's like, it's okay, I got you. We're a partnership now. This is what we do. I'll look after you and spot you until you're back on your feet. And it was this really wholesome moment that most couples would do for each other, right? That's what sort of being in a relationship is. If one person's struggling, the other one picks up the buck for a little bit and vice versa. And then it just flicked to the end of the episode where she found these texts on his phone and she confronted him and this whole thing blew up. He was it doesn't make sense, which is so obvious that he's cheating on her. He said he was at a sleep study, but then he got drunk at the sleep study and then he accidentally texted his kinks to his ex at the drunken sleep study. But I think the interesting chat is the Venmo, right? Like asking somebody to pay you back when you break up. I've done it.
Have you?
Yes.
What happened?
There's like a very in-depth story. Like there's a lot to it. And I wouldn't normally do it if you just break up with someone. Like I don't That's not who I am. But I was with this guy for a while, but I had to lend him quite a lot of money at the time. He got into some trouble, gave him a lot of money. And also I never would have asked for that back because we were in this relationship that was going
You thought you
to
were
marriage.
eventually going to have like joint finances and whatever.
Well, I
Yeah.
think you date people knowing that you're going to be with that person. Well, I do. I always date with intention. I don't waste my time with someone I didn't think was going to be someone. So I was dating with intention with this person I thought was going to be my person. And yeah, I lent him a bunch of money for this particular reason. Then it came out that he was doing all these things behind my back and he was cheating on me all the time. And so we obviously broke up. It was catastrophic. Like, it was a big moment. And then I thought, you know what? Fuck you. I gave you money, loving you, gave you money thinking we're in this great relationship to help you while you were just fucking other people. You can give me that money back. And he said no. And this went back and forth. And it got to the point where I was like, I'm actually cannot believe this person has done this to me. And then I was so ballsy that I wrote back and I said, this is the interest I would have earned on it if it was in my bag.
I love that.
And I put interest on it. And he
Fair enough.
And he paid the interest.
I don't know why I like automatically feel as though when Monica said it, it was a little bit of a different situation. They'd only been living together for like 4 or 5 days or something. So the amount wouldn't have been a lot. I think if it wasn't a large amount of money, I would feel differently and I would feel like, no, that absolutely has to come back to the person who gifted it. But I kind of hate the fact that my initial reaction was like, oh my gosh, as if that's how you're going to get your dignity back. Like, I don't like the fact that I was like, I would just rather leave with my dignity and not feel as though I had to ask them for anything in return. And I don't know what that's about. I wonder if it's like, I think for me, my financial independence has always been something that I've wanted to remain in place, if that makes sense. Like, it's almost like a security blanket where I'm like, I never want to put myself in a position, and I'm privileged enough that I've, been lucky enough to save money and always have that kind of rainy day fund. But I've just never wanted to give over that control to someone.
I think it's a principle involved in this sense. Like, I think if they just broke up amicably, I don't think Monica would have asked him for the money. I think it was the point where she was like, I've just funded you for the last 2 weeks or whatever. And then you've been doing this behind my back, fuck you. So I get it in that sense. And I think that feeling, Keish, comes back to this idea that women are never supposed to ruffle feathers and we're not supposed to go after what we want and we're not supposed to be assertive. So like we're supposed to, in that situation, have bowed down and said, sorry, it didn't work or whatever. Basically, her reasoning was, and she said, look, I've been in multiple relationships where I have looked after them. So maybe that's something that she's attracted to. Maybe she does go for people where she...
Like the broken bird.
Bird, I don't know. But she said, I've been in multiple relationships where I've looked after them and I've given them money and they've fucked me over and I've lost money. And I've asked, when they've broken up, she's asked them for the money back. And because it's done and they're gone and they're separated, she never gets it. So that is why on the spot, she said, I'm never letting this happen again. I know if you walk out that door, chances are I'll never get my money back. So that's why... to the audience, it looks like it was really quick, like the breakup, the cheating, and give me my money. She said it was quick because there was no way I was letting someone else get out the door again without, paying me back the money.
100%. And I absolutely love that she did it. And I don't know why I've got this initial feeling within myself that if I was in that position, I wouldn't. Like, I feel a little bit silly and I feel as though that's not a good thing that I would be like that. I mean, I know that you and I have been on different sides of this coin because I've never asked for money from an ex, but maybe that's because I haven't really lent much money to an ex. It's something that I think I would feel a bit uncomfortable doing. But like you said, you do it for someone that you love, and I think if they are in need, you should offer that. But I've just never been in the position where I have.
I would never ask for money. Like, I never have. Again, I've never asked for anything back, money back or gifts or goods or whatever when a relationship ends. Mine was only because I had lent this to him when he was doing the dirty behind my back. So I was just like, fuck you. But if I ended a normal relationship, and we get these questions a lot where like people will write in and they'll say like, we've broken up, he's asked me for this back or she wants this back and I think that can be a little bit silly. I think that what goes on in a relationship when it's loving and whole, I don't think you can go back and reflect and say, okay, well, we've broken up now. So over the last 2 years, this is everything that I paid for. I don't think it works like that personally. I think it's very dependent on the situation. But I would love to know how many of our listeners have been in this situation where they've asked for something back.
I would also love to know the smallest amount that you've asked for back. Like, what was the limit where you went, no, I want my $25 from dinner? Because we see this on the internet every now and then where like someone will go out for like a coffee date. The coffee date won't work out. And then someone will send a request like that. Venmo is American. Do we have it here? I feel like we have like PayPal instead.
Yeah, we have like you can pay someone with a phone number if you're Banks Liner.
Yeah, but I feel as though we've read about people asking for like $6.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know how petty you got. I would love it if it was something really, really, really small, but I would actually be really interested to know how you feel about this situation and whether you would ask an ex for money back, or does it have to be over a certain limit?
Don't you remember years ago, if you guys are new, you won't know this story, but years ago I went on a date with this person, and while we were on the date, he had to pay for the sandwich for lunch, and he was so upset that he had to pay for it that on the way back to the beach to eat the sandwich on our lunch date, he made me stop at an ATM and I had to get him $20 cash out. Keeshia, do you not know this story?
I do not. Are you joking?
Okay, strap in, kids.
He made you get out a $20 note.
Okay, it was a
to
lunch.
halve a sandwich.
It was a lunch date. I'm going to tell you guys.
I just thought about Friends, you know, when he's like, my sandwich.
Yeah.
My sandwich.
It was my sandwich.
It was a lunch date and we met in my suburb, which was years ago. So it was in Coogee in the eastern beaches of Sydney. We met. We're just going to get a sandwich, a smoothie, sit at the beach, low key, first date. We went to the sandwich shop. He ordered. I went to pay with my card. So I went to pay anyway, right? And as I handed my card over, they were like, sorry, it's cash only. And I giggled awkwardly. I was like, oh, sorry. I turned around to him and I said, do you have any cash? It's cash only. And he said, oh, that was convenient. Ha, 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 ha. Like a joke. And I was like, oh, okay, kind of joke, whatever. So he got cash out and he paid for the sandwiches, 2 sandwiches. That's it. He made it so awkward. So then I was like, look, let's make it even. The smoothie shop's across the road. I'll get the smoothies, call it a day. So we went across to the smoothie store and I went to pay with my card and they said, sorry, it's cash only. Oh, I thought this was hilarious. I was like,
How long ago was this? Like,
I know who has just these little tiny places in Coogee, right?
Yeah.
Little hole in the walls. I turned around. I thought this was funny. And I was like, what are the odds? I'm so sorry. Do you have any more cash? And he rolled his eyes and he said, are you just taking me to places that you know are cash only so you don't have to pay? And I didn't know if it was a joke, but I was so taken aback. And there was that awkward pause and I was like, oh, he's serious. And I said, oh, sorry. I was like, if you want, I can stop at the ATM and get you cash out on the way. And he's like, yeah, okay. As we were walking down to the beach, my internal monologue was going overdrive. I thought, surely he's not going to make me actually stop at an ATM right now and get him $20 out. The ATM was coming up and I started to slow down. I was like, oh, I guess I'll stop here now at the ATM, waiting for him to say, don't be silly. He's like, okay. So I got $20 cash out and that was when my panties dried up. Like they lock and key, pants were up. This was never going to go any further, ever. Gave him the $20, took it, put it in his pocket, walked down to the beach, had lunch and he said, I had a great day. Love to see you again. I was like, wrong. Computer says no.
oh my gosh.
Yep. So that happened. So
What
there are
an
people that
ick.
do that.
I mean, I feel as though the opposite of this would be men who are going on dates with girls who expect for them to put their card down. But that's a very cheap date. That's a daytime smoothie and a sandwich. I would understand if you went to Nobu.
Yeah.
It was like, nah, I didn't really expect to be paying this amount of money.
But to go to an ATM on the date,
I'm so uncomfortable.
he'd
for
still
you.
be single for sure.
Today we wanted to talk about something that feels a little bit left of field for us. We want to talk about the ethics of creating true crime content.
Doesn't feel left of field for me. because
You love this kind of thing.
I live for this.
We also want to talk about the changing perceptions of how we view victims and whether a social media frenzy that creates attention to particular true crime stories can be a really good thing or whether it's always a bad thing. We are going to talk about 2 pieces of content that are currently on Netflix that all have to do with the Menendez brothers.
It's a true crime docuseries that the world is sort of talking about right now. It's #1 on Netflix. It's called Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story. This is a 9-part series directed by Ryan Murphy. If that name sounds familiar, Ryan Murphy also directed the Jeffrey Dahmer story. This is sort of what Ryan Murphy does. He takes these huge crime cases and turns them into Netflix hits. You may remember a year or so ago, we talked about the dramatization and sensationalism surrounding Jeffrey Dahmer and that story. Well, Ryan Murphy has gone and done it again with the Menendez brothers. And there are two series going on concurrently on Netflix. One is this dramatization of the murder. Two is a docuseries that Netflix have created where they actually speak to the Menendez brothers in prison.
Yeah, so Eric and Lyle Menendez, they were 18 and 21 at the time. They are two brothers who shot and killed their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, with shotguns in their living room in 1989. Jose Menendez, their father, was a record executive who worked with bands such as Duran Duran and the Eurythmics, and they had quite a lavish Beverly Hills lifestyle.
They were a loaded, very rich family.
Yeah, they'd done very well for themselves. So on the night of August 20 in 1989, Lyle called 911 to report that his parents had been killed. Both of the brothers, they claimed that they'd been at the movies and they suggested that the mafia might have been involved with the crimes. However, later, Eric, the younger brother, actually confessed the murder to their psychotherapist, Dr. Oziel. He had taped those therapy sessions, and it was his mistress who took those tapes to the police in 1990 when the brothers were then arrested and charged with the murder of their parents. Now, the trial for these brothers was actually aired on TV. It was aired on a channel called Court TV, and it became a national media sensation. The brothers argued in court that they killed their parents because they were scared for their own lives, and they had been sexually and physically abused for decades by their father. Lyle also accused their mother, Kitty, of sexual abuse, stating that she would wash his body everywhere and invite him into bed with her where she would touch him.
It's a truly compelling story. And if you haven't yet seen this, it might not be for everybody. I have heard some people say it was hard to watch and they had to turn it off. I've heard some people say they love it. And when I say they love it, they don't mean they obviously love the story, but they love the way it was presented and filmed. I do love true crime. You guys know this. And I like these type of shows. In a weird way, when we spoke about Jeffrey Dahmer, I enjoyed watching that. And that sounds sick, but I don't enjoy it because it really happened. I enjoy it because I want to try and see the why. I want to try and get into the reason that people are making these decisions in their life. That's what I wanted to do with the Menendez brothers. Why did two boys, because everybody knows this case. Well, maybe not everybody, but it was a huge case of the time. And it's a story that's gone across the decades. When I heard it was coming out, I was like, I'm definitely going to watch that because I want to know the why that they did it. I enjoyed, and I know it's the wrong use of the term and it will be taken the wrong way, I enjoyed the series in the context of the actors were brilliant. If this wasn't a true story, I would have said it was directed well, but I guess I'm looking at it from a different point of view.
Yeah, so today we wanted to have a little bit of a conversation about a few things, but the main one being the ethics of making a true crime series without the victim's involvement. Obviously, two of the victims of this crime are dead, and so you're not able to get consent from them.
But two people that are heavily involved and accused are still alive and they are accessible. You do have the option to go and consult them when putting this docuseries together.
Which was evident because the documentary, it was an hour and 57 minutes, and the two brothers who are currently still in prison and have been for about 35 years, they recorded 20 hours of phone conversation interviews and they included those in the documentary. Interestingly, when the Ryan Murphy series came out, the Menendez family had a lot to say about it. So they said, they called it repulsive. They said it was a character assassination of Eric and Lyle. Their actual quote was, "We love them and to this very day we are close with them. We also know what went on in their home and the unimaginably turbulent lives that they have endured. Several of us were eyewitnesses to many atrocities one should never have had to bear witness to."
Which is interesting because you don't see that part in the series. You don't see all of the family coming forward and saying, yeah, we saw all this sexual assault. This is true. It also must be really hard for the families to still be on their side knowing they did butcher their parents. Like I can't imagine the complexities that are going on within that family dynamic, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about ethical considerations right now. Should we be making these series purely to be getting number one hits? Is it unethical to be making these series based on someone's real life without the consultation of the people involved? Keeshia, do you think it's okay for Ryan Murphy to have done this without any consultation from the Menendez brothers?
My immediate response to that is no. I think that it is quite unethical to use someone's deepest trauma, something that has happened in their very real lives, to profit from and to create something that is supposed to be entertainment. And I think where I really get into a grey area with this is when it stops being journalism and it starts being a bit of like a fiction narrative, but it's actually about real people. And so it's really hard to see where the line is between what's truth and what's been deliberately played up to create a more compelling story. And I think that this was really obvious. The main example that I have of this is that in the series that Ryan Murphy created, he implied that there was this incestuous relationship, a consensual incestuous relationship between the brothers as they were into their early 20s.
As they were growing up, yeah.
Yeah, there were scenes where they kiss on the lips. There's a lot of close sexual touching and like intimacy between the brothers.
There's a scene where they're actually in the shower together and the mum walks in, sees them in the shower together as like late teenagers, and then she just leaves.
It's, for me, very, very questionable to have made that into a piece of content when it's so known that there was sexual abuse that happened between these brothers as well as to them. So Lyle admitted in court that he had sexually molested his brother and that he was so sorry for it. And we need to also add in the complexities of the fact that this was someone who was sexually abused and probably didn't have very good understandings of what was an okay sexual touch when they were children. He was a child when this happened. So I really have a problem with the fact that that narrative was continued and portrayed as though it was a consensual, incestuous relationship as they were adults. One person actually took to X and made a statement saying, if Ryan wanted to make a show about twin brothers developing an intimate relationship with each other due to shared sexual trauma and parental abuse, then he should have written a new story. You don't get to rewrite the experience of real people and real victims to suit yourself.
Well, I think the reason people are so hooked on this and captivated by the story is because there isn't a clear outcome. And when I say that, yes, the outcome is they went to prison, but nobody really knows what happened. Did they kill their parents because they just wanted money and then they fabricated this story about incest for their whole life and sexual abuse, which is, that is a question that is posed in the Ryan Murphy series is, has the lawyer just come up with this to try and get them off? Let's just say that this was because you had years of this abuse.
And actually that lawyer, Eric's lawyer, had used that as a defense in a previous case.
Yes, this exact defense had gotten someone off previously. So the question is posed is, were they psychopaths that killed their parents for money, then fabricated a story that they were abused their whole life to get off? Or were they really abused their whole life and then just snapped one day? And this is what nobody actually knows. We didn't get to the bottom of it. We weren't shown enough evidence on either side. So this is the question. Half of the population thinks that they should be in prison because they are liars and they just killed their parents for money. The other half thinks, well, should they be serving this much time when they really were abused this whole time? I think it comes back to the story, the same question we posed with Jeffrey Dahmer. Who owns the story? So when we talk about should Ryan Murphy have consulted the Menendez brothers, I don't think there is a clear answer, because if they really did just butcher their parents and they're sociopaths, then do we owe that story to the deceased parents who had their lives taken away from them? Do we have to consult murderers if that's the case? But if they were abused and that was true, then yes, they should have been consulted. But who owns the story? And usually it's a little bit more clear. But this one is so complicated. I agree with some things Ryan Murphy has said off the back of this, and I disagree with some. Have a listen.
If you watch the show, I would say 60 to 65% of our show in the scripts and in the film form center around the abuse and what they claim happened to them. And we do it very carefully, and we give them their day in court, and they talk openly about it. We present the facts from their point of view. Largely, we spent 3 years researching it. All that is true.
What were sources that you were using for that research?
Just everything that we could find. I had such a huge team, and I do when I do these biopics. So I think that's really interesting, and people should know that. I also understand what's interesting is in this age where people can really talk about sexual abuse, which I didn't have when I was younger, that talking about it and writing about all points of view can be controversial. The interesting thing that I think about Monsters this season is it's a Rashomon kind of approach where there were 4 people involved in that. 2 of them are dead and 2 of them are alive with the point of view. But what about the parents? We had an obligation as storytellers to also try and put in their perspective based on our research, which we did.
People are talking about the Monster series and how there was like this romantic relationship between the brothers. Where did that come from?
I think people are confused about that too. If you watch the show, what the show is doing is presenting the points of view and theories from so many people who were involved in the case. Dominic Dunn wrote several articles talking about that theory and how he thought that theory had validity. What we do in the show is he talks about that. We are presenting his point of view just as we present Leslie Abramson's point of view. The show presents over 10 points of view of different events. So when people watch that and they see that, that is somebody in our show having a narrative statement about this is what I believe really happened. And we had an obligation to show all of that, and we did.
See, I do think that is really interesting about, one journalist who had a theory about this incestuous relationship.
And then they ran with it.
Yeah, and the second part of this that I think is really interesting is looking back at it, the evolution of the way that we view victims now and the fact that we now have a lot deeper understanding of what trauma and sexual abuse can do to a person. So back in the 1990s, as this court trial was publicised across the nation, this was some of the media's response to what they thought of the brothers.
The myths back then about who a sex offender was didn't fit the Menendez family. And a powerful, highly successful executive was not looked upon as the kind of person who would sexually abuse their children. But looking at these attractive, well-dressed white guys just doesn't match the public's perception of what a victim should look like. And therefore, there's a natural tendency to discount it. It just doesn't fit with how we think of privileged people.
The defense used psychological manipulation of the jurors by putting nice-looking, wealthy young men in sweaters crying on the stand.
The sweater defense is so pathetic to me. It didn't work for Dan Rather when he was trying to soften his image. Why didn't the Menendez brothers leave? They'd grown up. They should have left the house if they were being abused.
But everything, watching a lot of court TV. Riveted to the Menendez brothers trial.
I don't get a chance to watch much TV.
Oh, these two arrogant brothers are gonna fry. Please.
Britt, do you think that the media and the public were biased because Eric and Lyle were rich white boys?
100%. At the end of the day, sexual assault was not seen to happen to boys. It wasn't seen to happen to rich white boys and males by a rich white man. This was shown when in the Ryan Murphy series, they spoke about battered woman syndrome. Now, battered woman syndrome was literally it's changed now, but that was the name used to refer to women that were in abusive relationships. Because of the fact it had woman in the title, they were like, well, these little boys don't fit that, so we can't use that. We can't use that as a defense. We can't use that as an excuse or a reason. So that played against them immediately. I also think a huge part of the reason that they were convicted, I mean, it's hard, right? The question is not did they do it? They did it. It's proven, they admitted it. They said, we killed our parents. This is not what the discussion is about. The discussion then goes to, did they get a fair trial? And morally, ethically, what do you do in that situation? Because they have murdered their parents, but if they were sexually and physically abused since the age of 5 until 20, what should the verdict be? What should the punishment be? Should the punishment be as harsh as life in prison and the death sentence and murder, or should we take leniency into the case because they were abused and manipulated their whole time? It's really hard to hear the media mocking them and laughing at them like that when they were sexually abused their whole time. But I definitely believe if they had a trial now, I think the timing was imperative in the outcome of their case. If they had a trial now, it would be a completely different trial, different media coverage, and a different outcome. A huge part that I believe, and they do present this theory, was because it was at the exact same time as O.J. Simpson was being tried. O.J. Simpson, if you're not aware, ended up getting off his murder trial. He had an amazing defense system who Kim Kardashian's father was a part of. And I say that because it sort of all ties in together. So O.J. Simpson was not convicted of murder, but because he got off, the public and the media and everybody as an audience, a collective audience, was wanting to see somebody go to prison for a crime that they did because they felt like they were cheated with the O.J. Simpson case. They feel like that was very obvious and somebody should have been punished for a crime they did. Let's keep the community safe. Let's prove that the court systems know what they're doing.
And interesting that you mentioned OJ because Ryan Murphy also directed I'm not sure if you've seen it on Netflix, but The People versus O.J. Simpson. That was another one of Ryan Murphy's creations. They've stated that maybe the O.J. Simpson's acquittal did have a lot to do with the fact that the brothers were retried. In the second trial, for anyone who doesn't know the actual story, the first court case ended up being with a hung jury. So that was between murder and manslaughter, and that would have had a very reduced sentence if they had been convicted for manslaughter, and that took the sexual abuse into account. The trial was retrialed, and in that, the legal system took the option of manslaughter off of the table. So it was either murder or they walk free.
Or free, yeah. There was no in between.
And that's why they were both given double life sentences, in which they're currently serving now. Another part of this conversation has to do with trial by social media, because of the social media frenzy around these docuseries, and it's kind of been stewing on TikTok in particular over the last couple of years. There is further evidence that Jose Menendez sexually abused a boy outside of their family, and that's the new evidence that they are potentially going to be bringing into court. Because of that public response, the brothers have been granted a court hearing, and it's going to happen on November 29 of 2024, so very, very soon, in a month and a half. And it could actually result in a retrial or resentencing for the brothers, which makes me question, I was very critical of the fact that these dramatized and sensationalized coverage of a particular story, in my opinion, was unethical. But then the other side of it is like, well, if it creates such a response that these brothers are now able to get a retrial and have the case be re-examined, is it a good thing to get more eyes and ears on a particular story so that they can maybe have a different outcome? I don't know.
Pamela Bozanich, she prosecuted the Menendez brothers in the first trial back in 1993, came out off the back of this and said this.
The only reason we're doing this special is because of the TikTok movement to free the Menendez. If that's how we're going to try cases now, why don't we just have a poll? You present the facts, everybody gets to vote on TikTok, and then we decide who gets to go home. Your beliefs are not facts. They're just beliefs. And by the way, all you TikTok people, I'm armed. We got guns all over the house, so don't mess with me.
I'm on both sides here. It is true. Your beliefs are your beliefs. That's it. They're not fact. And we are obviously led down a garden path sometimes. That's what the trial did. They presented only the evidence they wanted to present so that there would be a guilty verdict. Then you see the power of the public and the power of social media and the power of the voices like Kim Kardashian, who has 300 million people on social media that she can influence. She comes and starts to defend the Menendez brothers, demand retrials. The rest of the public get on board. There's a mob mentality, and now we are literally going to see them go back to court. But in this case, this could be a good thing because they will get probably a fairer trial with the new evidence presented. So it's so hard to know what the right thing to do is with this sensationalism and the social media movement. Like, on one hand, you can condemn it and say, stick to your lane. Like, you guys are in social media. You've got nothing to do with it. But on the other sense, we're seeing that they have the power to completely change people's lives.
Yeah, and I even question the response from the woman who initially was the prosecutor on the Menendez brothers saying, the only reason that we're here is because of TikTok. I actually think that's a good thing. I think it's a really good thing that now we have a way to voice what we think is morally correct, to voice other perspectives around, well, hang on, have you considered all of these different factors that may or may not have contributed to an outcome? I think that she's being very patronizing in how she says, should we just do a poll on TikTok and see what happens? Our legal system was supposed to be created to represent the morals of the people who live within that society. And for her to kind of just be like, your beliefs are not facts. Yes, that is true. But the beliefs that were brought into the court were also not facts. They really discounted a lot of the effects that sexual abuse can have on people, especially people as young as what these brothers were. I just think it's very patronizing. I had quite an opposition to her with a lot of what she had to say, and I thought, you're deliberately trying to discredit the people online by calling them little TikTokers and, making out that their perspectives are not valid. And I don't think that that's fair. I actually think that a collective response from social media can be very impactful. And we're now seeing that because they're going to go back to court. It's only because of the people who have examined this case and been like, something doesn't feel very right here.
Also, how interesting, just to finish this off, how interesting, and I wonder what the Menendez brothers think, to hear that Kim Kardashian is now advocating for them when Kim Kardashian's dad was the defense for O.J. Simpson. The reason big reason the Menendez brothers went to prison was because O.J. Simpson didn't. I just pictured that web of like string.
One more layer. Kim Kardashian is a very, very good friend of Ryan Murphy.
Yeah.
Who created the Monster series.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of parts of this that are just so interwoven. And yeah, and I think at the end of the day, this isn't necessarily about these two particular brothers. I mean, it could have a very real outcome for them. I think I question more about the ethics involved in creating true crime content and what needs to be considered and whose perspective needs to be taken into account, and whether we completely understand the effects of trauma and abuse that can lead to the outcomes. I mean, even as that's come out of my mouth, it makes me kind of question, well, when we report on true crime now, like there's so many podcasts, do we take the perspective of the murderer into consideration? Not really, because they're the bad person. They're the one who's done the wrong thing.
I think the question that everybody should be asking themselves now is, should we continue to profit off and sensationalize real people's lives, real crimes, highlight people like Jeffrey Dahmer and the Menendez brothers? Like, is that where we are? We obviously love to consume it. Every time one of these is dropped, it's the number one on the streaming platform. They're the top podcasts that we listen to are true crime podcasts. Like I think in almost every country's charts, true crime takes up one of the top 10 podcasts. We, for whatever reason, love to consume it. And it will always be a moral conflict for every person on, should I be watching this and enjoying it because they have sensationalized it so much and dramatized it? They've Hollywoodized it. Should we be sitting there and enjoying it? At the end of the day, I think the answer is going to continue to be yes, because people are making money off it. It's time for Suck and Sweet, the highlight and the low light of the week. Keish, you can kick it off. What's your suck?
My suck is our non-alcohol induced hangover. I literally spent all of yesterday on the couch. And I feel as though I've really been on a journey that has caused me to be alcohol free, and I've been reaping the benefits of it. I've been talking for quite a few months now about how much better I've been feeling and how I don't have anxiety in the way that I used to. And yesterday I was just like, I don't deserve this. I do not deserve to feel this rubbish when I haven't been doing the things that I used to do that would make me feel this rubbish. So that is my suck for the week.
That is what a sober night out in your 30s does to you.
Honestly, like I'm 31. What happens is you age. What's happened to my body?
What's your sweet?
My sweet for this week actually has a lot to do with you, Britt. I feel as though we do spend so much time together at work, and, you know, even in our communication throughout the week when we're not physically together, it is a lot about...
I think we text and call each other more than me and Ben.
Like, quite literally, it's a lot about work. But in the last couple of days, I think that we've gotten to spend so much time together that is just, it's just felt more normal to, we have quite a weird relationship because you're my boss, you're also one of my best friends, you're also the closest thing that I feel I have to a sisterly type relationship. And sometimes when those things are all kind of mingled in together, it's a little bit weird about
what am I? What are we?
And like the power dynamic and kind of like what's work, what's not, what's fun times. Like it's all quite blended. And not that I felt like we needed to have like a reconnection.
But we did.
But we just did. Well, you didn't need it, but I feel as though we got it. In the last couple of days, we spent a lot of time together doing some really fun things and getting to like get dressed up together and go and enjoy that. And you and Laura winning the award was definitely a highlight. I think it was really cool to see you guys recognized. So that's my sweet for the week.
Cute.
I'm sorry if I stole from your sweet because it might be that as well.
It can be your sweet too.
What was your suck for the week?
My suck was, I think my neck Botox is wearing off again. Like every 2 to 3 months, guys, this will be my suck. So yesterday I started getting really bad headaches again. So I had 10 hours in bed last night. My Whoop told me 10 hours in bed, which was brilliant. But I just had the worst headache. So that was my suck, was yesterday I was just out of action on a Sunday. Sunday's like your down day as well. It's the day that you want to actually relax and go and enjoy the day. And I just couldn't enjoy it because of my head. But my sweet has to be the award, winning our first like big industry ACRA it would be remiss of me not to say that. So yeah, we're chuffed. And that's it. I'm sure that's Laura's suite too if she was here. She had a great cruise from what I can see. So I think her suite would be like the cruise into the award, even though she wasn't there to get it. And yeah, it's really, really cool. So
sweet upon sweet upon sweet. And actually funny you speak about migraines because tomorrow we have an episode dropping with your neurologist, Dr. Caitlin Parrott. It is all about migraines. And this was a really interesting one for me to edit actually because I've not ever had a migraine. And I think that by listening to the experiences of people who do get it, I have such a deeper empathy for people who do experience it. I think I've seen you in the depths of it.
Yeah.
But it was sympathy, not empathy. You know, I wasn't able to relate to what that might feel like. And
you're
I
like,
think,
oh, that sucks, but you don't know.
I was like, oh, yeah, you know, like, so you have a really bad headache for a couple of hours and then, you know, you've got to kind of go to ground and then you come out of it. Not that I was ever dismissive of it. No. I just couldn't understand what that must feel like. And I think this episode with Dr. Caitlin, it really opened my eyes to what those people experience.
Yeah, and it sounds a bit rogue that we're doing this to a lot of people, but I cannot tell you the interest, the most responses and questions that I get on Instagram, in my DMs, in emails is around migraines. How you get them, why you get them, what kind you get, how do you treat it, why you treat it, does it work, what are the triggers, can you get your treatments while you're pregnant, while you're breastfeeding? There are so many questions that came off the back of it and I realized how many people it affects. Does it affect women more than men? So that is the reason I wanted to do it because I know how many other people are struggling and don't have the answers, and I didn't have the answers a year ago, and it changed my life when I stumbled across Dr. Parrott and the treatments that were available, the reasoning behind things and the triggers. So that's why we're doing this. And I hope even if you're not a migraine sufferer, you listen because you probably know someone that's got them. Anybody can get them at any time. So even if you haven't historically had them, something can change in your hormones or your life or your stress, and you can become a sufferer just as easily as apparently I can grow out of them in a way. So I'm hoping that happens to me because I'm growing, I'm aging, and I haven't aged out of them. So I hope you all get something from tomorrow's episode. Caitlin is not your normal neurologist. She's wonderful.
She's so great. She's so interesting. And I think that's what I really wanted to stress is that if you don't suffer from migraines, I would naturally see an episode like that and I'd be like, that's not for me.
It's so interesting.
It was so fascinating and I learned so much, but it was also fun because she's great. She's really, really funny. So that is coming out tomorrow and you know the drill.
Tell your mum, tell your dad, tell your dog, tell your friends and share the love because
we love love.